What's up, fight fans? No longer recording out of the Nissan Sentra. Different location for a different type of video. In this video, instead of breaking down a fight, I'm going to be talking about all the best moments in the UFC for 2022. Let's get into it. First things first, knockout of the year. Yes, this was a year of some of the most insane knockouts. We had Michael Chandler with the front kick to the face on Tony Ferguson. We had Miley McCann with the spinning elbow out of nowhere. But there's only one knockout that stands way above the rest. Yes, I'm talking about the head kick heard around the world, the pound for pound headshot. Leon Edwards with the insane out of nowhere head kick to Kamaru Usman, knocking him out and making Leon Edwards the undisputed champion of the world. This was an insane knockout to watch live. For the first couple minutes after it happened, I honestly couldn't believe what I saw. Unbelievable. Submission of the year. Now, we had a late addition to the list of top submissions of this past year with Ilia Topuria choking out Bryce Mitchell. Other than that, most notably, we had Jiri Prochazka with the rear naked choke on Glover Teixeira, putting a stamp on one of the craziest title fights I've ever seen. But if I have to pick one submission that stands way above the rest, I'm going to have to go with Islam Makhachev choking out Charles Oliveira to make him the 155-pound champ, purely because to choke out Charles Oliveira, the guy who choked out everybody else, it's completely insane. I think a lot of people had the fight going the other way. They had Charles choking out Islam. So I think Islam getting the choke on Charles instead was a major statement. And that was so far the defining moment in the career of Islam Makhachev, who could go on to be the best 55er of all time. Fight of the year. We got really lucky this year. We got to see some of the best fights in the history of the UFC. It's a tough one to choose between Khamzat versus Gilbert Burns, which is one of my personal favorite fights of the year. The fight itself was incredible, but we finally got to see Khamzat get actually tested. Insane to watch. And at the end of the year, we got one of the craziest fights in Michael Chandler versus Dustin Poirier, which was really close to making the top of my list for fight of the year. But if I have to choose, it has to be Jiri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira. Insane back and forth in that fight. You really had no idea who was going to win till the very end. And of all things to happen, the most unlikely scenario, Jiri via submission. Absolutely incredible. I think when we look back, that fight goes down as the best 205-pound title fight of all time. Performance of the year. I just wanted an excuse to talk about Khamzat. Khamzat versus Kevin Holland was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Khamzat Chimaev is a straight up freak of nature. I can't believe my eyes when I'm watching him. Going into that fight, I thought there was a good chance he was going to get caught on the feet. Kevin Holland being a jiu-jitsu black belt and being the taller, longer fighter, a guy who's had more fights at 185, I thought Khamzat was going to have a lot of trouble, but instead he sliced through him like butter. Again, didn't get touched a single time in that fight. Absolutely incredible. Best performance I saw this entire year. And that event actually had a couple of the biggest storylines of the year, between the whole insane last minute fight changes with the main event and the co-main event. Khamzat Chimaev with the incredible flawless victory over Kevin Holland. And then of course, Nate Diaz retiring, probably the biggest name star we're going to see leave the company this year. Major storyline, even though I think there's a chance we see him come back. And now to end the video off, I'm going to give my predictions for 2023, which I think is going to be an insane year. We have huge fights coming up. We have the return of Conor McGregor. We have Francis Ngannou versus John Jones, which is just going to be unreal. But I predict that this year we're going to see a lot of fighters change weight classes, specifically at 155. I think that division is going to look totally different by the end of the year. We've already seen guys like Tony Ferguson go up to 170. I think we're going to see a lot of guys, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, probably Conor, go up to 170 and look for fun fights, since they've all had their shot at the title already. I also predict that we're going to see some new champions in the UFC. Yes, this year we've already seen a couple new champions with Leon Edwards and Alex Pereira. I think that trend is going to continue. Guys like Alexander Volkanovski has some serious competition waiting in the wings for him. Ilia Topuria, Arnold Allen. Aljo has to get through Cejudo and O'Malley and potentially Cheeto. I think we're going to see a lot of new champions in the UFC this year. And my last and final prediction is I think there's a good chance we see a couple UFC stars get exposed, specifically Paddy Pimblett. I think we're going to see him take his first loss in the company, and that's going to be a crazy thing to watch happen, especially if it's not even somebody who's ranked. I think there's a very good chance we see the Paddy train get completely derailed, and I'm sure guys like Ariel Helwani will have a blast picking him apart. So there you have it. Those are my predictions for 2023. This is my review of this year in fighting. This was one of the best years I've ever seen as a fan of the sport. Some of the best matchups, some of the best fights, and I think next year is only going to be even better, especially with the 30th anniversary coming up. Thanks for watching.